Welcome to the Franklin County Varsity Sports Report. Live for the next half hour, join us as we provide you with all the scores, news, and updates to everything Franklin County sports. And now, here's your host, Bobby C.
Hello and welcome to the Franklin County Varsity Sports Report. I'm Bobby C. I hope you're doing well here today. Boy, I got to tell you, we have a big week and a lot to talk about here on the show. Want to say thank you to our underwriters. Thank you so much to Lisa Alber of Alber Hearing Services, located at 33 Riddell Street in Greenfield, online alberhearing.com. Manny's TV and Appliance, 2 locations, located on River Street in Greenfield and Route 9 in Hadley, and by Franklin First Federal Credit Union. Franklin First Federal Credit Union at franklinfirst.org. All right, we got a lot to talk about here today. Why don't we get right into things? We want to let you know that there was the International Volleyball Hall of Fame Western Mass All-Stars that were selected. This is pretty cool because the International Volleyball Hall of Fame announced their All-Stars. And we have some folks that were here in Franklin County that got picked to be able to be part of this showcase. We want to say that Frontier's first team selection was Jill Aspinall, also Brooke Davis and Sydney Scanlon. Frontier's second team selections were Lila Evans and Elise Fredericks. And also for Turner's Falls first team was Maddie Lamatanian, and also second team for Turner's was Emily Young. They had the opportunity to be able to be a part of this cool showcase game. Not sure if you know this or not, folks, but the Volleyball Hall of Fame is located in Holyoke, so they make this a big showcase each and every year. Well, speaking of Western Mass Volleyball, they came out with the all Western Mass Volleyball teams, and we have those All-Stars we'd like to talk about here today. In Class C, first team, Jill Aspinall from Frontier, Brooke Davis from Frontier, Lila Evans from Frontier, Elise Fredericks from Frontier, Sydney Scanlon from Frontier. Franklin County Tech had 2 representatives this year for first team All-Western Mass, Emily Ryan and Faith Smith. Class D, first team, we congratulate Octava Crawford of Mohawk and Madison Lamatanian of Turner's Falls. Second team in Class D for volleyball, Emily Young, senior from Turner's Falls, Taylor Green, also from Turner's Falls, and from Mohawk, the following 3, Sophie Guy, Palmer King, and also Ellie Patnode. So congratulations to all of them. All got honors for all Western Mass Volleyball this fall. You know, when you slide into football, we got a lot of awards there to be able to share with folks as well. Let's talk about the 1,000-yard rushing club. We have 2 gentlemen that did it this year. Josh Samaski ended up getting a special 100-yard game against East Hampton. Unfortunately, it was a loss for them during the playoffs where they had a chance to hopefully get into where they needed to be. And unfortunately, they lost the game, but he was able to get the 100 yards he needed so he could be part of the 1,000-yard club. Then they decided they were going to add 1 more game to Frontier's season. They took on Holyoke High School, and guess what? He ended up with 160 yards in that game, so that brought him to almost 1,200 yards for the season. The senior was definitely one of the shining stars of this year's Frontier football team. Franklin County Tech football. This is such a story that is awesome. And I am so pleased that I can be able to share this story with everyone. Heading into the Thanksgiving Day game between the Tech School and Smith Vocational, it seemed pretty unlikely that the freshman running back, Josiah Little, was going to be able to reach 1,000 yards on the season. Why? Because he needed literally so many yards to make it happen. Yep, he needed 249 yards in one game to be able to make the 1,000-yard club, and he did it. How did he do it? Well, the freshman ended up with 118 yards on the ground in the first half against Smith Voke, and then 134 yards in the second half against Smith Voke. He got 252 yards, gave him over 1,000. He joined the club. And he was also the MVP of the Thanksgiving Day game, and his team won 32-16. So a huge congratulations to Josiah Little for having just an incredible Turkey Day game to put him in this year's 1,000-yard club. So congratulations to him and Josh Samaski. Another thing that happened in football was pretty cool, and I think that this is always something that I think every coach should do. And I think it's important if they can be able to get it so it gets recognized. And that is the coaches' unsung heroes. You know, sometimes there are players on a team who just add that special ingredient to make your team so much better. Well, Greenfield High School football coaches Mike Kacheski said that Drew Conant was the coach's pick for unsung hero and his football team this past fall. He says, quote, "Huge unsung hero is Drew Conant. He was the cornerstone of the offense and defense, undersized at 5'11", 200 pounds, but he played with heart and soul. Also, a good athlete. He had a chance to be able to start off his younger career as a quarterback, but then he got moved into a different position. He ended up being our lineman. He was the best lineman we had on our team this year." Also, quote, he also said that a National Honor Society member who will also play college football. If there's anything I can say about the unsung hero in Drew Conant, Kacheski says he left everything on the field. So very nice honor right there for Drew Conant from his coach, Mike Kacheski. Speaking of all Western Mass football selections, I wonder if Conant made it. Well, let's talk about it right now. In Division 7, first team, all Western Mass, David Carey, Greenfield High School. Brendan Driscoll, Greenfield High School. Drew Conant, Greenfield High School. First team, Division 7, all Western Mass selections. Second team, Division 7, all Western Mass, goes to Ryan Palzeri and also to Devin Buchanan, both from Greenfield. In Division 8, we have the twin brothers that made first team to represent Frontier, and that is John and Josh Samaski. The Samaski brothers were able to make Division 8 first team all Western Mass. Congratulations to all these gentlemen. As we continue on with the Franklin County Varsity Sports Report, I'm Bobby C. I want to let you know that we are doing a bunch of honors here first as we honor what we have so far that has been sent out from our fall sports season. How about all Western Mass for League All-Stars in good old boys soccer? Let's talk about these soccer players locally that really made a difference on the field this fall. The Moriarty League All-Stars include Peyton Sledesky, Frontier, Carm Bright, Frontier, Tyler Dubriel, Frontier, Dylan Martin, Frontier, and Brady Birch, Frontier. Schmidt Division All-Stars include Jason Quinn from Pioneer, Ryan Potter from Pioneer, Henry Zakara of Greenfield, Theo Pop from Greenfield, and Daniel Panichetti from Greenfield. Tri-County League All-Stars, Franklin County Tech School representatives are David Klempner and Sam Lashtour, and also from Mohawk is Porter Carr. So congratulations to these all-league All-Stars. Western Mass All-Stars have not been out yet, but they will be out by next week's show, and we can give you the all Western Mass teams at that time, the players anyway. All-League girls, Bi-County League All-Stars from Greenfield, Emma Savoy, Azamina Sesajanin, Greenfield, Michaela Valente, Greenfield, and Emily Merritt from the Franklin County Tech. Pioneer North League All-Stars include from Frontier, Samara Green, Isabel Marapizzi, Caitlin Mackin, and Michaela Santos. In the Pioneer South All-Star League here, they have Lucia Saviano from Pioneer and Allie Unitas from Pioneer. So congratulations to those All-Stars. You know, another All-Star that was out was the All-Star for all Western Mass golf selections. Division II, first team, Dylan Archer from Greenfield. Division III, first team, Jalen McGraw from Pioneer, and also Braden Fair from Pioneer. Second team, Division III, include Brady Buska, Franklin County Tech, Joey Mosca, Turners Falls, Phineas Tutman from Mohawk, and Anthony Zager from the Franklin County Tech. They all made their all-Western Mass selections for their divisions. Congratulations in Division II and Division III. You know, the one thing that a lot of people have been wondering is what is going on with the mask mandate for the winter sports season. And I must tell you that I do have that information for you folks here today. People are wondering, with outdoor sports not being as popular now, of course, we're in winter season. It's only going to be downhill skiing that'll be outside, hockey inside the rinks. All the gyms will be holding all of the indoor track during the winter months, and also boys and girls basketball. How is that all going to work out? Let's talk about the mask mandate. The mask mandate for indoor sports will remain in effect heading to the beginning of the winter season. The MIAA's their executive director, Bob Baldwin, sent the letter to the member schools letting folks know where the direction is being headed for the MIAA and how they are going to be able to work with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education to be able to keep people safe this winter. Quote, in order to maximize full participation of winter sports, we will begin the winter season with the same guidelines that were utilized this fall. Student athletes, fans, coaches, officials, they will all be masked indoors. Now, the Department of Education and Secondary Education will be assessing the mask guidelines again on January the 15th. He also wanted to note, and I want to be able to make folks know, that they are going to be going by individual school situations as well, which means if there's any kind of an uptick of COVID cases within a school, there is a possibility that the fans won't be able to go to those particular games during a time where there is high doses of this. And most importantly, they are going to be reassessing this, making sure that they can be able to see if they can lift any of this for the end of the winter season. If they can, quote, through our work with state officials monitoring vaccination rates of COVID, we will take into consideration that the MIAA committee votes will push for the opportunity to be able to lift masks if possible. Notice where I came at the end, if possible. Now think about this right now. We've got the highest number of COVID cases in Franklin County we've had in a long time. Matter of fact, Greenfield, very high. Also, Montague has been battling with it as well. Even my little town of Berniston is now in a full mask mandate in a little town like Berniston. So with that said, we are only going to be able to have the opportunity to get into these gyms to watch these kids if the MIAA gives us that permission to be able to go in with masks to watch the kids play. So luckily, right now, we have been able to kick off our winter season with this mask situation in place. And I will tell you, we kicked off our basketball season on Bear Country 95.3 last night, a game that I'll be talking about in just a few minutes between the Greenfield boys and the Turners boys. We had the game last night, and everybody was masked. It was a great environment, brought some excitement back to the gym over at Greenfield High School, and I got to be honest, it was wonderful to be able to see that there was that many fans that showed up, even in masks, to be able to support the GHS team. That is what we want to see. Speaking of that, we've had an opportunity to be able to kick off our brand new season of winter sports here in our area. It all started back on Thursday. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to talk about the kickoff of our first week of sports here on the Franklin County Varsity Sports Report. In boys and girls swimming, after a season of which was all virtual with only, yes, 6 swimmers on the Turners Falls team, things are a little bit different this year, and I'll tell you why. Because they were able to do a merge with Frontier Regional, who joined their program. Now, the swim team has 5 boys and 13 girls. That's huge. That is a big difference. Now, you have 18 swimmers on your swim team, not just 6. So being able to literally double your number is a huge thing for this swim team. Turners kicked off its season back on Thursday. They were over at Munson High School, and the nice thing was they were there. That's right, they were in their pool. And I will tell you that the Turners girls ended up losing 89-61, and the boys ended up losing 57-20. But there was some good bright spots about this meet. Turners kicked off its season on Thursday, of course, as we know, with winners. On the girls' side, Leah Gump ended up winning the 100-meter butterfly. She also won the 200-meter freestyle for the relay team. Also, Ella Guba Bani, she ended up winning the 50 freestyle. Also, Sophia McComb won the 100 breaststroke. Lillian Poirier won the 100 backstroke. And they also had other people who did really well on the team in their first meet. On the boys' side, Desmond Wallace, he took the 100 freestyle and the 100 backstroke for Turners, while teammate Matthew Sibley was second in both the 50 free and the 100 breaststroke. With the new team, the Thunder is looking to gain experience throughout the season and build on the program that they've had for many years. By the way, we want to let you know that they will be back in the pool today as we do our show here today, taking on Chicopee. In boys basketball on Thursday, it was the kickoff of the Franklin County Tech Holiday Classic. That's right, they call it the Holiday Classic. And the Franklin County Tech ended up getting beat last Thursday by Mount Everett, 54-45. Ty Sadowski ended up with 18 points, knocked down 3 threes. Wasn't enough, though. Noah Ostakaitis, he ended up with 14 points for the Tech. Also, a couple of other guys who had points in the game include Dylan Chanel and Robert Belleville. Also on Thursday last week, the Frontier boys took a trip down to Palmer to take on Palmer High School, and they ruined Palmer's opening day as they win 65-46. Dante Reggiano ended up with 16 points. Patrick Boyden ended up with 15 to lead Frontier to that win in Palmer. So congratulations goes out to Frontier on kicking off their basketball season with a win on Thursday. Well, on Thursday in girls basketball, it was the Franklin County Tech girls taking on Mount Everett. And I got to tell you, it was a very low-scoring game. Final score 29-22. Really good defense was played by the Franklin County Tech school, but the offense was a little scary, especially after the end of the first quarter when they were down to Mount Everett 7-0. So think about this. If they were down 7-0 after one quarter and they only let up 22, that means for the next 3 quarters, for the next 24 minutes of a game, they held Mount Everett to 15 points. That is quite a difference in what the Tech was able to do defensively. Kendra Campbell, Caitlin Trudeau, they both finished with 8 points in the win. Trudeau also added 7 steals. She had 5 rebounds. Faye Smith ended up with 6 points. She pulled down 10 rebounds for the Tech in the win. Well, there was a game that happened on Friday in girls basketball between South Hadley and Greenfield. We've always noticed that Greenfield has been a powerhouse in girls basketball. Hold on, let's talk about this year's rebuilding year. A couple of years ago, they ended up losing a really good player in Raquel Provost. She went to Mount Herman. Then they ended up losing the big stars that they lost a couple years back with Reagan Hickey and also with Sam Smith to college. This year, they lost Katie Hazelton, their big star. She is now playing college basketball in Boston, so she is graduated. Also, the big player that everybody was talking about from Greenfield, who had an amazing year last year and in her 8th grade year too, is not with them as well, Amber Bergeron. She is now at Northfield Mount Herman playing basketball with Raquel Provost. With that said, they lost a lot. Also, Alina Sesajanin, one of the 2 Sesajanin girls, was supposed to be able to play. She tore her ACL. She is still not ready to get back on the court yet. She already missed the whole fall sports season. So you lost her as well. That means that this Greenfield team is pretty much depleted of a lot of great talent at this time. They still have Azamina Sesajanin. They still have Lily Kacklemeyer. They also still have Tess Rancourt. But they're missing other elements that this team needs to be able to get over the top against good teams. And this team that they played on Friday, South Hadley, is one of the better teams in Western Massachusetts. And you don't normally see a score like this. South Hadley 60, Greenfield 24. 60-24. You don't see John Hickey coach teams struggling this bad. But because of injury, losses of graduation, and transfers from kids that are going to prep schools, it really affected this Greenfield girls basketball program this year. Tell you the other thing, the press that South Hadley puts on people is very suffocating, and it can be very challenging to be able to get the way that Greenfield's used to of moving the ball. They really struggled under pressure in this game on Friday. Coach Hickey says, and I quote, "One like this early is good and bad. The good because it shows where you need to be. And at times it can be bad because sometimes you're just outclassed. And unfortunately, we were outclassed tonight." Tess Rancourt, she ended up with a team-high 14 points. And this is what Hickey had to say about her, really needing her this year. "It looks like we found a post player for this year's season. I don't think she's played that well with her back to the basket. And boy, what she was able to do was excellent." Quote, "So we're going to build on that, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to utilize her and be able to take her in the post attack the basket with people like Lily Kackelmeyer, who's quick and is able to attack the basket. Nice lefty. Azamina Sesajanin likes to attack the basket too. That's what they're going to have to do to be able to win games this season. Will Greenfield be the big dominant team this year? I don't think so. I think you're going to notice a big difference in how our girls' teams' games will go this year compared to years past. Boys basketball on Friday. Tough day for the Turners Falls boys. They got beat by Granby. It was all part of a special tournament that happened down at the Mullins Center. Yep, it's called the Pioneer Valley Classic. And it happened over at the Mullins Center where Granby beat Turners Falls. The boys got beat Friday night 71-31. It was a huge explosion by Granby that continued throughout the game, and they ended up picking up the win. Boys hockey. Talk about a big challenge to be able to kick off your season. The Greenfield hockey team took on a team that is pretty darn good as far as I'm concerned. And why I say that is because they are good. And they're good because they really know how to be able to build hockey in Westfield, where the Greenfield team got beat by Westfield 3-2. It was a tough one for them, going down there to lose just by a goal. But I will say this, and this is what people need to hear, is that this team has a lot of talent still. It just went up against a very good Westfield hockey program that has been good for many years. Speaking of boys hockey, after losing to Westfield on Friday night, they were back on the ice again last night. And they ended up beating Mount Everett 8-2. Green Wave used their speed, and this was on an Olympic-sized rink, by the way, over at the Berkshire School, which is a pretty cool place, by the way. And they were able to pick up that division win over Mount Everett 8-2. 5 different Green Wave skaters ended up getting their first varsity goals in the win. That included Jake Jurek. He scored twice. He also had 3 assists. Matt Garvin and Matthew Lavoine, they each scored and had 2 assists. Jason Smith and Derek Wisman, they found the back of the net for the first time as well for Greenfield. Well, there was a boys basketball game last night too. It was the Greenfield boys taking on the Turners boys. And after a 40-point loss to Granby, Turners went up against Greenfield. And after the end of the first quarter, it was Greenfield 15 and Turners Falls 12. But at the end of the game, the final score was Greenfield 72, Turners 31. So really, for the first quarter and a half, Turners was in this game. And then all of a sudden, the wheels fell off the bus. David Carey ended up with 18 points to be able to lead all the scorers. Avery Jacobs, he ended up with 10 points for Greenfield. Levin Prondecki ended up with 11 points. Brandon Truesdale ended up with 9 points. Also, Addison ended up with 7. They were the top 3 scorers for Turners Falls. Greenfield, they got a big test coming up this week, and it will be on Friday night over at Goodnoe Gymnasium as they take on Frontier Regional. It'll be a 7:30 tip between 2 teams that I will tell you should be a pretty entertaining game. Want to talk a little bit about this Greenfield team while I have this chance because it was their first game of the season. And I want to talk about Turners a little bit as well. So let's get right into Greenfield first. Greenfield has 10 seniors on their basketball team. Let me say that again. 10 seniors on their basketball team. Coach Angelo Thomas normally can get a little hot under the collar at times, but I'll tell you, the way he's handled this crew and the way that he was able to coach last night really showed a lot about the discipline between players and coaches. And that's huge. And the assistant that he has in Ryan Roberts is going to be a big help to him as well, because that JV team from Greenfield, they beat the Turners JV team by 50 last night, 79-29. So they got a lot of talent coming through with Greenfield basketball. 10 seniors, a couple of guys that are underclassmen that can still play. It's going to be a very interesting season for GHS basketball. The one goal is they want to get to postseason play and be a part of the state tournament. On the other side, let's talk about Turners for a minute, and let's talk about their situation. It's almost a lot like Greenfield's girls basketball team. Let's talk about that for a minute. Last year, they had a guy who ended up playing for their basketball team in Josiah Little. He's now at the tech school. They also had Ollie Postera. Ollie now goes to Greenfield. Also, there was another situation where they lost other players as well. One of them was Brandon Driscoll. Driscoll, who played for Turners last year, ended up transferring to Greenfield. So now Driscoll is playing for the green and white. Also, they lost their senior leader scorer in Sanders. That's right, Marcus Sanders graduated last year from Turners. They lost a lot of players on this Turners team, which is making them see what it's like to try to be able to grow as a team with losing so much. So Turners, a lot of the same situation of what's going on in Greenfield right now with the girls team is happening across the river for the boys. But let me tell you what, though, the girls team is still pretty good over at Turners Falls High School, and they had a good matchup that happened last night. It was the Frontier girls and the Turners girls. Final score was 40-28. Frontier ended up winning this one, but it was about defense. Defense, defense, defense is why Frontier won that game last night. Frontier did enough to get the job done offensively by putting up 40 points, but holding a very good Turners team to 28 says a lot about what this team was able to do. It was 21-13 at halftime, and there was an 8-point lead for Frontier, but they gained on that by being able to open things up a little bit more, where they literally were up 14, 36-22 after 3 quarters, and then they ended up pulling off the win. The one thing that we could say that's been nice about basketball this year is that we're going to see much better games of the girls. I think the girls is where you're going to see decent matchups, that is. Give you an example of what I mean by that is that if you look at the girls' game between Mount Everett and the Franklin County Tech girls, it was 29-22. Game here, 40-28. We used to see games where there were 40-point wins all the time, and it was happening all the time. You're not going to see that this year in girls basketball here in Franklin County. Well, there was a matchup between the Franklin County Tech and McCann Tech that happened over the weekend. And I must say that the Franklin County Tech boys picked up their first win of the year. And it was a good win, too. They did it at home, all part of the Holiday Classic. Ty Sadowski, after having 18 points in his first game, ended up with 16 in his second game. Robert Belleville, he joined him in double digits with 10 points. And Robbie Murphy ended up with 7 points in the win for the Tech boys. Also, we want folks to know that there was a game last night that really showcased a lot of things. It showcased a lot of what can happen in sports locally. There was a team that's down in Springfield who ended up being probably a 30-point underdog and ended up literally upsetting one of the big schools down in the Springfield area. And it was the talk of Mass Live. Of course, with our show, we don't really talk much about those kids because of what we do. We do everything locally, right? So with that said, we didn't really do much about that because of the fact that we didn't have to. We got our own little core here. But I wanted to bring up a point that anybody can beat anybody at any time. And just because you know that you could go into a game and lose by 30, well, that other team might not come out ready to play. And if you come out with the eye of the tiger, you could do what this team in Springfield did last night early in the season by knocking off one of the favorites to be able to win the Western Mass tournament. You know, a team that's going to be pretty tough to beat this year in basketball is going to be a couple teams that are going to be part of our league now because of the league adjustments. And one of those is Drury. Drury's going to come down here and take on our locals. Lee High School is going to come down off the mountain and play our locals. We're going to see some Berkshire teams that are now realigned into a new division that has been set up for high school basketball. So now, where you didn't really hear much about what was going on in the Berkshires, now you're going to be able to see firsthand what these teams bring to the table when they come down and play in our league. I love this idea. I think it's great. The only thing that stinks really is the fact that it is a travel. So when Lee or Drury have to come down here to play our local teams, or our local teams got to take the bus ride up there, it can be late. You know, by the time you start a 7 o'clock game, you could be out of there by 9, and by the time you get home, it's after 10, and then you got to do your homework or whatever, and it can make it for a long day. But the only good thing about this that I like is the fact that you're able to build the competition level to make things a little stronger within your league. And this is what they're doing because of the new state tournament. With the new state tournament, they want to be able to solidify decent talent to go to this tournament from Western Mass. And what better way than to prepare yourself for that tournament? Now, they did in the fall have their Western Mass tournaments that were run by local athletic directors who decided to do that. It wasn't run by the MIAA. That was only the state tournament. So it should be interesting on whether they want to do the same format for winter sports and still have the MIAA tournament as well. It should be interesting on whether that will happen. I heard that they would like to do it. Let's just hope that there's no problems with any kind of illnesses throughout the winter months that prevent that from happening. But it surely would be wonderful if we would be able to have a nice Western Mass tournament like they did for the fall sports for the kids to get them ready for the MIAA state tournament, which, by the way, we were very well represented. We were very well represented in the MIAA tournament this fall. The student athletes did amazing. No respect for our area, none. Most of these teams had to go on the road. Most of these teams won 1 or 2 games on the road before they went into deeper competition, but they at least went on the road. Some of them traveled as far as Cape Cod. Some of them traveled as far as almost Rhode Island to be able to play. Where the Franklin County Tech girls, their field hockey team, had to go all the way to Manchester by the Sea in Gloucester, and then went to the other side of the state and played Westport, which is almost on the Rhode Island border. The volleyball team from Mohawk, they had to go down and play in Hyannis, and they came 3 days later and played Bourne on the Cape. 2 games, 2 trips to the Cape for the Mohawk volleyball team. My point is, you don't know where you're going to land when this state tournament seedings are done. You could be very surprised at where your team could play. Could you imagine a team from the Berkshires? Let's just use Lee. What if Lee has to go and play Martha's Vineyard? They got to go from literally almost New York to where they are in the Berkshires, all the way to an island where they'd have to take a ferry to play a basketball game. This is what could happen with this tournament. This is a true statewide tournament. All you have to do to get in is to have a 500 record. They do have, for special chances to get buys and things like that, a chance for you to do well if your team does well. But think about this. You could be ranked number 46 in the state because you made it with a 500 record, but you could play the number 1 seeded team. Or if the first 4 teams get a bye, you could play the number 5 seeded team, and you could be traveling all that way across the state to lose by 40 in the first round. It could happen. Or you could upset that number 5 team where that seeding ended up being by their record. They saw that they were playing the number 46 seeded team. 46 seeded team maybe started the season off pretty slow. Got yourself to where you won 6 out of your last 8 games. You got yourself your 500 record, and you surprised this team because you are playing good basketball, or you are playing good hockey. This is what could happen this winter. So when people say, well, what's it going to be like with this new tournament for basketball? A little bit different. We're going to be having the Springfield teams going out and playing against Boston teams. Well, that's good, because we got some really good basketball teams in Springfield. We do. And we got some really good teams in the Berkshires. And if honestly our teams play well here, we could be okay here as well. But you gotta play the games. And that is what we want, is we want to get tune-ups. We need tune-ups before this state tournament. And I really hope the athletic directors here in Western Mass decide that they would like to be able to have some kind of a tournament for basketball and for hockey to prepare our teams for this tournament. You know, one of the things that people ask me is, what is very important to you when it comes to high school sports? As an announcer, as a person who follows high school sports probably better than anybody. Matter of fact, I even had Jeff Terrell say to me last night, dude, he calls me dude. Dude, you always are prepared. And I am. But I'll tell you why. Because I have a passion for local sports. Do I follow pro sports? Yeah, I do. Do I have a passion for pro sports? Hell no. I don't have a passion for professional sports. They're multimillionaires who go out there, they're lazy, they don't give it all, they be able to make big money, and they are crybabies. High school kids, they get no money, they get local support, they get community support from the community members that want to come watch them play, and they know that at the end of the day, they're doing it for themselves and school pride. That's why high school sports is so much better than professional sports. Let's talk about the middle sport, right in between, the middle part of it. You got high school, then you got college. What do I think of college sports? Test me. Test me sometime. I know a ton about college sports. Why? Back to kids playing for their school, playing for the opportunity to be able to play for their university, being able to have an opportunity to get an education to be able to better themselves in lives. Some of them will go to the NBA, but the majority of those college kids that play college sports, they are not going to the pros. So a lot of it has to do back to what is with high school. School pride, community, and an opportunity to be able to play and get your education. So when I see every radio station that's sports talk always talking about pro sports, pro sports, pro sports, it drives me crazy because we forget about the building blocks of where it started. It started here at high school sports. Then it went to college. And then the certain few, which is getting all of the love, is a very small percentage. I have always said there's probably 500,000 podcasts out there that have to do with professional sports. I want to know how many shows like this there are nationwide that do high school sports. Guess what? This is me. I'm in the tiny percentage where all these big podcasts are all about all the big sports teams. And it's time for more of this. It's time to get local radio stations across the country to do what Bear Country does, WARE does down in Ware, the Berkshire teams in BRK. Those stations still do high school sports. Then you got the college networks. We have the UMass Sports Network that gives you a chance to listen to the hockey games, to the basketball games. Did you know that the Greenfield girls basketball team was always a great team in this area? Yeah, you knew. You know why? Because you viewed this show. Did you know that the UMass women's basketball team is one of the top 50 programs in the country? Oh, you didn't know? Yeah. Your 20-minute drive to go watch great women's basketball for $12 is right down the road. Top 50 team. They made the NCAA tournament last year. But people don't know about it. But I bet you know that the Bruins stink right now, the Celtics stink right now, the Patriots are on fire right now. Right? You know all about that because those 500,000 podcasts that are out there are telling everybody about how their local professional teams are doing. And I also bet you that there was a lot of podcasts out there locally that never mentioned much about the Revs. The New England Revolution, who was the #1 seed going into the tournament. No one talked much about them, but they talked about Tatum, Brown, they talked about Tuukka Rask being out, an injury, and boy, they've been talking about Mac Jones. Why? Because they think that's what people want to hear. They're wrong. They are wrong. Because you know what? You can listen to it anytime you want. You want to be able to know more about what's going on locally because you can follow the kids. You can follow your college or university. You know, I can't believe there's no buzz around here with no podcasts about UMass hockey. UMass hockey won the national championship last year, but nobody's mentioned nothing about them on a podcast. But they all think it's perfect because they can talk about the big three, the Bruins, the Celtics, and the Patriots. And of course, coming up in another 2 months, it's the Red Sox. You know, would you rather be in competition with 500,000 other podcasts out there, or would you like to be in a niche where people tune into you because you're doing something different? This is why the Franklin County Varsity Sports Report does well. It's a niche. It's about our kids locally. The reason why I'm educating you on this is because I want people to know that you should be glad that you have a local radio station supporting kids with sports, that you have Greenfield Community Television putting on sports games for the kids. The FCAT down at Frontier that does it down there. Pioneer getting their games on Berniston Northfield Community Access Television. Community Access Television has turned this around for sports. This pandemic, believe it or not, as much of a pain it was, it gave a chance for places like Greenfield Community Television to get more notoriety. Niche. Not about the big. Stay small, take care of your community, and engage. You will all win. And this is what we've been able to do. So when somebody asks me, Bobby C., how come you don't have a national podcast show? I say, why? So I can compete with 500,000 other podcasts? That doesn't do anything for me at all. But I could sit here today and I could talk about local sports, and I want to know where anybody else is in this community that's doing it. None. Zero. Zippo. Every week, this show comes on because somebody in the community was willing to step up, educate people on what's going on with local sports, and giving them the goods. So just remember something. Niche is big. The richest people in the world were somebody who came up with a bright idea that nobody else did. Anybody can make vanilla ice cream. Anyone. It's vanilla ice cream. But can you come up with that special ice cream that nobody's been able to come out with before? Well, there was a bunch of guys who did do that, didn't they? From Vermont. Yeah. And they are known by two names. And you know what their names are. So when I get to a point and I tell people how important local shows like this is, it gives me the opportunity to let you folks understand why we do this. I do this for the kids. I do this for the kids that want to be able to get some notoriety. They're not going to go play college, most of these kids. They're not going to be in the pros. Yes, we were very fortunate to have some wonderful talent come through Franklin County, but that doesn't mean it's going to happen forever. So my point is thank you for tuning into a show like this, because we really do this for the kids. We don't do it for any other reason than for them. And with that said, I want to talk about how important it is to be an athlete and also someone in the classroom. Franklin County area superintendents had a special awards that they did a couple of weeks ago, honoring student athletes. What they do is they honor the students who are able to get the Superintendent Award. But it's funny because when you look, all of these kids all play sports. Someone said to me one time, how important was school with you? I said, if it wasn't for sports, I probably wouldn't have done well in school, because I needed to have a 2.0 or I couldn't play. I wasn't a student. To sit here in front of you and talk each and every week came from a lot of years of experience of being able to do what I do. It wasn't the case back when I was in high school. So being able to read these names is such an honor. Congratulations to the Superintendent Awards for these 7 seniors. Paige Sulda of Turners Falls High School. Sienna Moore of Marhar Regional. Lucy Coster of Pioneer. Sean O'Day of Mohawk. Rory Corin Townsend of Greenfield. Lauren Ross from the Franklin County Tech School. And Shakri Gudamella of Frontier. Congratulations to them. Student athletes. Yep, getting it done in the classroom, getting it done out there with their classmates. And think about this. What does sports teach a lot of people? You know what sports teaches a lot of people? It teaches you teamwork. It teaches you how to be able to work with different personalities. It gives you a chance to be able to learn from the other players that you play with. You also get the opportunity to be able to share experiences of winning and losing. And most importantly, you get to support your community and your school. These student athletes are literally going out, doing that wherever they play their sport, but when they get home, they're sitting and they're getting their homework done and they're pulling off 4.0 or better in the classroom. Now, let's sit down with all 7 of them and let me ask 2 questions. And I guarantee you I'm going to get the same answer from all of them. First question I'd ask is, are you planning on going professional on what you're going to be doing with the sports that you play? All 7 of them are going to tell me no. Are you going to be able to go on to a bigger and better career of what you want to be able to do with your life by what you did academically? What are the kids going to say? Yes. They're not going to be the professional athletes. They don't need to be. They need to be able to be productive in their lives. And these 7 students who got the Superintendent Awards will have this opportunity. You ever looked at the report card of postings of the different schools when they show the honor roll and look at how many of the kids play sports and then look and see if their names are on the honor roll? You will be blown away at how many student athletes are honor roll students and play sports. You will be blown away. Now, not to pick on Philippe and I, 2 older guys here, because John is the young buck here, but me and Philippe, we can be the first to tell you that guess what? Back in our day, a lot of the athletes, they weren't that great in the classroom. A lot of our buddies, including ourselves, probably weren't the greatest in the classroom. But we loved playing sports. Philippe loved to be able to play soccer. He was a goalie. He loved it. I love being able to play football, basketball, and being able to play baseball my whole life and be able to play for a lot of years after. But I wasn't a good student. Now, John, he comes from an era where a lot of the kids started to smarten up when they realized how important the classroom was, where Philippe and I are a lot older. And it is a difference that's happened now. And I look at these student athletes and I say, hey, they're doing much better educationally than we've ever done. And you should be very proud of that. And that's the one thing I am proud of with this show. So as I say goodbye, I want to say that we'll be back. Next Tuesday will be our final one before Christmas. So we have one more show before Christmas, which we'll do with you. Want to say thank you to our underwriters. Thank you, Franklin First Federal Credit Union, franklinfirst.org, Manny's TV and Appliance, River Street in Greenfield, Route 9 in Hadley, and Lisa Alber of Alber Hearing Services, 33 Riddell Street in Greenfield, alberhearing.com. For my producer, John Meisner, our executive producer, and the man who is able to make sure the camera works. We doing all right, Philippe? All right. Johnny and you keep this thing going for me, and I appreciate both of you very much. But I also appreciate you folks that view the Franklin County Varsity Sports Report. Have yourself a great week, everyone. We'll see you next week. And remember, support your local athletes.